Hey everyone, I am Becky and welcome to Happy Hour with Buzzing About Romance. I am super excited to be joined this evening by author Livy Hart. Livy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
We are super excited to have you here for Happy Hour. I know it's kind of weird to do Happy Hour on a Tuesday, but this is a big day. We need to
It is.
celebrate.
That's right. Every day is a good day for happy hour if you're celebrating.
Sometimes you just have to take one for a Tuesday. Although I kind of had the Mondayest of Tuesdays.
Oh no, that's not
It
good.
was a day, but it's fine. It involved children and the eye doctor and a credit card. It was fine. you know, we are super excited to have everyone here joining us. Oh, grab it. We are celebrating the release of Planes, Trains, and All the Feels. This cover is adorable. Did you get say?
I could not have created something in my brain that cute. So I did have say in terms of what they looked like, but that was like a beautiful collaboration with Entangled and our art director, Elizabeth Stokes. Like just, I loved it. Immediately it became my whole personality.
I love the color choices. That cover just pops and I love it.
I feel very lucky to have it. I claim it even though I didn't make it. Like, this is me.
Look at this beautiful thing. Um, I love an illustrated cover, and this is a rom-com, so I absolutely think it is perfect for an illustrated cover.
Yes, I think it really has a playful motion sort of vibe. Like it feels like it's in motion, which is good for the book and good for the sort of the whole vibe.
So like I said, tonight we are celebrating Livy Hart and the release of Planes, Trains, and All the Feels. Rules of the night, you can ask all the questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we go along. In the description of the video are the links to all the places to connect with Livy. Um, so our traditional way that we kick off happy hour is we ask you, what are you drinking this evening?
I am drinking orange soda out of a confetti cup because I just felt like, in keeping with theme, I wanted it to be colorful and festive, but not
Perfect.
too festive, right? So just orange soda.
Just orange soda. I get that. I understand. So I got stuck a couple months ago on water talk over on TikTok.
I like it.
And I'm a little obsessed with all these flavor mixes that people were doing on Water Talk. So I made myself order a bunch of those skinny mix waters because they
Mm,
were making, I mean, I don't know. Is it still water if you add flavoring?
it is. It is. What is the best flavor?
Um, I really like the unicorn. It tastes like cotton candy in my water. I liked it, but I have cherry tonight. I have
Mm,
skinny mix cherry and some water.
that's
It
fantastic
just tastes
and
like sugar-free
hydrating.
Kool-Aid. So and I'm all for that, right? I mean, who doesn't love
Definitely.
Kool-Aid? Bring you back to your um childhood. So, Livy, let's get to know you. Why romance?
When I was younger and I would watch movies with my family, and it was always action movies, I quickly figured out that the only interesting part to me was when two characters look like they might fall in love. I would watch a whole bomb get detonated and a city get saved, just waiting for two characters to acknowledge that they liked each other. So I just sort of picked up that that was like the most interesting part of those stories for me. And so I just always gravitated towards love stories and the sort of cheerfulness of rom com. And it just kind of grew over time, and I started noticing that's what I was picking up. So once I figured it out, I'm like, well, I'm going to make this. This is going to be my thing, and so that's where I'm at now.
So, have you always been a writer, like a storyteller? Were you one of the ones that as a kid that you wrote stories about everything, or is kind of storytelling and writing a newer thing?
It's definitely not new. It's always been a habit. I remember watching Harriet the Spy, and I made my mother buy me a composition notebook, and I would carry it around and just write everything down that I saw because I thought that I was Michelle Trachtenberg and Harriet the Spy, and that evolved into stories that I used to keep secret. Mostly like friendship style stories and sort of just that kind of thing to help get through the angst of middle school and stuff like that. But I've always been writing, even when I wasn't claiming it.
When you were kind have you are you a reader? Because not every writer is a reader. But are you a reader?
That's a great question because it's funny when you talk to people and you do podcasts and you interact with the bookish community, they're like, "What are you reading?" And for the last, couple months of I've been writing, I'm like, I'm not reading anything in this moment, and that gives me anxiety. Uh, but I am a reader. I'm probably not as fast and efficient as a lot of the book community because when I get into something, I get major tunnel vision. I obsess over it. I read it 4 times. So I'm a little bit more of like a cherish saver kind of reader, but I do
Sure.
I do love to read.
Yeah, not everyone, and it's funny too because talking to authors, a lot of authors will say they read outside their genre when they're writing. So, you might find an author that's really reading cozy mysteries while they're writing dark mafia romance, just because they want to keep things, kind of clear one way and not accidentally absorb.
Yes, that is the solution for sure. I love reading other genre because then your brain is not fixating on I like how they did that or I think I want to change something in what I'm writing now. You're not going down that writer rabbit hole. You can
Yeah,
just enjoy like a like plush Scottish mystery and just not think twice about romance at that moment.
right. I mean, although romance is the best genre. I mean,
It's true.
let's just, it's internet official, guys. Um, so do you, so we love to talk about tropes. That's one of the things at Buzzing About Romance that we are big on. We are big on tropes and helping people find, books kind of based on the tropes they like, and breaking down tropes a little bit too. So do you have a favorite trope? It can be to read or to write.
I do. I'm so trope driven. As a writer, enemies to lovers was what came most naturally to me at first in writing romance. And then the more I got into the genre and the more I was reading romance, I noticed that I was loving marriage of convenience and all these sort of like forced proximity style tropes. But I think it was the process of writing planes that made me truly fall in love with Sunshine Grump. And so right now I'm on a big Sunshine Grump kick, but I think it really is more of a broad opposites and two people who are not trying to change each other, but bring out and accept each other for those differences. So big Sunshine Grump fan right now.
I love Sunshine Grump and I like it to be either way. I like when she is grumpy or and he is the sunshine and I like it just the opposite way. I also don't mind two grumpy people being together and together they find, happiness. I love that. Opposites attract. I think it's really a great trope because you can do so many things within it. You get fish out of water, which really leads into rom-coms really well. Um, I like that whole idea of, sometimes people just can't get along and they rub each other the wrong way.
Yes, they just can't understand each other until, a moment of clarity and then, oh, I get it now. I get you now and I accept you. And it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Um, do you have a favorite type of hero? Because as I was reading this, I would venture to guess that you probably are a big fan of the cinnamon roll hero.
That is exactly it. I love cinnamon rolls, but I don't necessarily, I like to have almost two tropes every time. I like a cinnamon roll with something else to sort of like almost like a bait and switch. When someone is secretly soft and then it's like they accidentally let it slip that they have this like beating heart, I just latch onto those moments. So I like to say like a funny cinnamon roll who, hides it with humor. And then halfway through the book, you realize that it's just like they're undying loyal to the heroine and they can't hide it anymore. Like I just love a softness that comes out over time.
Yeah. I think cinnamon roll, it's interesting because sometimes I love a cinnamon roll and sometimes I'm like, is he really just a beta hero with a nice title? And
Yes.
everyone gets on me and they're like, this is why you're grumpy. Stop doing this. But I kind of like the burnt cinnamon roll, which your hero is a little burnt. He's a little extra crusty on the outside about things. Um, but I mean, we'll get into this because this was the road trip romance I didn't even know I needed. And so we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. So, favorite part of writing, dialogue, plot, creating the setting. What do you love about writing?
Um, I I love dialogue and I do a pretty bad job of hiding that. If you read my books, it's basically a screenplay where I throw in like a description of one room in somebody's house. Like and I I think it comes from, I mean, if I'm being honest, I was like raised on Gilmore Girls and Amy Sherman Palladino and that style of dialogue. So people who listen, or Marvelous Miss Maisel, that's all the same creator. It's fast and I just love that. So dialogue is something I've always kind of studied and comes naturally. Whereas I have been working on sort of using setting as a character more and kind of like looking for places to really make scenery come alive. But that was sort of something I had to learn because otherwise it would have just been a script.
Although I think I love dialogue and heavy dialogue driven books, which Planes and Trains and All the Feels is a very dialogue driven book, but they're stuck in a car together.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have a choice but to have conversation. Because how many times can you talk about the field they're driving
My
past?
editor's like, what are they seeing out the window? Well, they're seeing dead grass and they're seeing some trees, and it's there. They're there.
Yeah. Um, but it also makes for a book's pacing to be a little faster, which I like because it made it like a little fast, more flowing read. So good job on dialogue there, friend. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
So okay. So Plane Trains and All the Feels came out today. You guys can find it wherever you get your books. Um, okay, what are the challenges in writing a rom-com? Because I think writing a good rom-com is one of the most, I think that's more difficult than writing mafia or dark. I think that you have to have some very specific things for it to be successful. And so I don't think it's easy to write rom-com.
For the challenge in writing rom-com, I think, is figuring out what balance you as an author want of your rom and your com. And so, you know, that's a whole discussion about decisions as an author and sort of who you want to be and what you enjoy. But I find that for me, I want it to be heavy on the com. I always want that to be an equal part of it. And so, I think there's so many amazing contemporary romances with funny moments. But for me, I want to make sure that mine is heavy in the comedy to kind of live up to that rom-com promise. And so the challenge then becomes not making it too slapstick, not making it too unbelievable, and grounding every funny moment in reality a little bit, which might sound considering what this book is, it was right there on the line, but it those things happen. And since people have read Planes, I get a lot of like messages like, did you know that this happened to the plane that I was on? And did it? And so I'm always so relieved when the wild things I write are actually real, and I make sure to research it. But anyway, so just making sure that it's truly funny without being over the top and unbelievable, but still really having that core romance that's swoony enough to sort of balance it out. So that's my challenge, is balance, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Okay, so inspiration. So it's Plane Trains and All the Feels. The setup of this book is they meet on a flight and the flight gets grounded at a small mid-size airport. Like it's big enough that their jet can land, but it's not huge, like a huge terminal. So like I live in Northwest Ohio. Obviously, our main airports are going to be like Metro Detroit or Columbus, but Toledo has a small airport, so it could land there technically. But there's not a lot around it and not a bunch there, right? So totally could happen there. Um, but they meet on this flight and it gets grounded because the windshield breaks, right? Bird flew into
Mm-hmm.
it.
Just little crack, little
Little
crack.
crack. So they have an emergency landing at this small airport and they can't go anywhere. Like they're stuck and they decide to rent a car and travel together because they're both headed in the same general direction.
Yes.
But he has been needling her the entire flight. Like he wasn't necessarily like, wasn't he kind of teasing her, like bantering at her? I wouldn't say it was flirting, but it was.
I would say it was an intense awareness of each other that started from dueling over the same parking space.
Oh,
So
that's right. I
if you,
forgot. Or kind of had a meet
yeah,
cute over a parking spot.
a meet a meat angry where, he took the spot and she said, that's my spot, a little bit of bickering. So by the time she runs onto the plane late, she has a vendetta that she's carrying with her because he took her spot and then she missed the shuttle and he didn't hear her calling. And so all of this was like this setup of, by the time they get on that plane, they already have made up their minds about each other from that one, flash impression. And so on the plane, they're just really, really owning like that first impression, like, I don't like you and here's why. And they tell each other why pretty much right from the start. So definitely bantery, but I would definitely not flirting. So
No, not
there's a little
flirting.
bit anger to get over in the beginning.
Well, and Luke kind of comes off as a bit of a jerk. Like
Hmm.
he's, definitely a little entitlement, but it's okay.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt bad for Cassidy because she kind of has the mother of all mothers
Yes, mommy dearest.
that gives her a little bit of a hard time about things. And, you know, I loved her, but I kind of wanted to give her a hug a little bit too.
Yes, just like when you just feel like you can't win, no matter what you do, you can't win. So at some point you're like, well, maybe I'll just stop playing the game, but not really because she's clearly still trying to impress her mom and make her happy.
Yeah. So, are you a road trip person? Do you like going on road trips?
Um, no, just kidding. I do.
No.
I love when I'm going anywhere once I have already left, but the lead up, I'm like, I do not want to get in the car. All these things could happen. I'm kind of like Luke in that my like this like undercurrent of anxiety about traveling kind of manifests as like prickliness. So once I'm on the road though, I like it. And I love stopping about every 45 minutes, which makes me a very popular guest on road trips.
Right. Everybody is clamoring to invite you on those road
Yes.
trips.
I am taking applications. I will come stop your car all the time.
Yeah. It's so funny because well, they're adults now, but when I had younger children, we traveled. It wasn't actually my children that were the problem. It was my mother that needed to stop all the time. And I was like, I told my sister after like a 16-hour drive to the Outer Banks, I was like, listen,
Never again.
never again. You will always
Yeah.
get my mother in your car. And she's like, okay, thanks.
Great. Yeah, my children are not the problem. It's me. It's definitely me. My husband could probably drive the whole like 18 hours where we go to Florida every year with no stops, and I'd be the one. I'm the one.
I love a road trip. And can you read in a car? Because apparently there's people that cannot read in a car. I can read in a car.
I couldn't for a little while. I had like a moment, but now I'm back to being able to read in a car. Sometimes I would get car sick, and then I don't know, maybe I just needed to I needed 3 more years of life, and now I can read in a car
Now you
again.
can
It's a
read in the car.
wonderful, wonderful development.
Yeah, I mean, I can read anywhere. If we're all being really honest, there is nowhere I cannot read.
And there's nowhere that we're not reading. Like you think we're participating in something now. We're reading on our phone.
No, we're reading today. I had children at the eye doctor and they were doing their thing. And the receptionist, she's like trying to chit chat with me. I'm like, okay, but I'm reading Kindle right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Obvious for everyone to see.
Um, so there is some great chemistry that happens because these guys are in forced proximity in this car together. Um, is do you think chemistry is easier to write when they're forced proximity? Like they have nothing else to do at this moment but talk to each other.
Yes, yes and no, but mostly yes. With car scenes, and I think it could just be like recency bias, but I'm like, I cannot write anymore in a car. There's only so many ways they can move and to manifest that chemistry because really the first 30% of most romance books is just noticing each other and how many different ways can we notice them and their mannerisms and all that plus the dialogue. But I think it does lend itself to some like maneuvering that can kind of manifest chemistry for sure. Whereas in other types of books you might like rely on other characters or sort of like for like outside elements to sort of for them to work against for their chemistry. So I guess it would be, I can see why maybe starting with a road trip book for someone who's kind of practicing chemistry could be good because you're kind of, it's like given a box and a scene and you can only work in the box. And so it's a fun way to explore.
It I think it is, and I think that the challenge becomes like how do you keep it fresh? How do you make it feel innovative and original, and that it's not just the same scene on repeat chapter. And I think you did a really great job of that. Like now this is instant connection, and I know not everyone gets instant connection. I love instant connection. I am a fool for an instant connection. I get more mad about slow burns.
When I'm writing, whatever I'm writing at the time, I'm like, I write it for the people who like it, but you're also thinking about the people who don't. And as I was writing Planes, I'm like, there are going to be people who are like, how is this happening so fast? And, you hear that sort of thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that when I was in Target last week and I saw an attractive man, I noticed it right away. I'm just, being honest, like
Yeah.
sometimes, it doesn't take 6 to 8 months of to notice somebody. And so it starts somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and one of my big tropes that I struggle with is friends to lovers, because I get really frustrated with the but conversation. Like, I'm attracted to you, but it will ruin our friendship. And so, like, I read a Friends to Lovers a while ago, and I searched the word but in the book. 628 instances of the word but. And I'm like,
And not in the fun way. Sorry.
Yeah, no, only one T, not two.
Oh,
Very
disappointing.
disappointing. Like,
Well, if there's going to be a but, there needs to be a different kind of one other than the same one every time, right? Like, but
right.
we're friends. Like, okay, that's fine. How about, but I also, ran over you with my car, and I don't know if we can get past that.
Right.
Some other variety to it. No, I totally get what you're saying.
Sorry you're hurt, but I pushed you down the stairs.
Yes.
So, like, I love instant connection for that reason, because I like that there's this, and I had an instant attraction relationship with my spouse. We met, and it was almost instantaneously, like within just, a short amount of time, we were together. And I like that. That fire, that passion. And so I liked that in this book. And I think that it does okay, because for how many hours were they stuck in this car together? They had nothing to do but chemistry.
And so it almost makes it feel like, since it is a short timeline, they really had more, it felt like they had more time together, because the amount of time those two spent together could rival some like 4-month plots, right? Because you see each
Right.
other at work, or whatever the case might be. They had like a condensed like boot camp of chemistry. And so that was definitely an interesting sort of dynamic.
Now, I didn't look. Did you make a road trip playlist, song list for this?
I did make one. I just made it yesterday. And the reason was because the one I made to write the story to is embarrassing, and it has a lot of music that I'm ashamed of. And so I had to like
Okay.
make one that actually fit the book. So it does exist.
You
It
you
does
can't
exist.
make that statement. What music would you be ashamed of?
I just listened to, there's a song that was popular last summer by Young Gravy, and it was like a remix of something, and it was on TikTok. And I truly listened to that song on repeat. And then, like, I don't know what happened. And now the secret is out. And so I'll have to put it on the new
I was
playlist.
gonna
But no,
say,
it's just like popular TikTok songs. It's not truly embarrassing, but I always wanted to be much cooler than I was when it comes to playlists. Like, I wanted to be like alt classic and all this stuff. But I'm like, no, it's just it's Ariana Grande again. Or
I mean,
something like
and
that.
that's fine. I got excited. I can't think of what author it was. They shared their playlist for their release, and it had Broadway tunes on it. And I'm like,
Fantastic.
sign me up. That is my music. That is my genre. And, when my girl child she's 18 now, but she, when she was, middle school, and everybody was in love with like One Direction before they all broke apart, like when they were first coming on. And everyone's like, oh yeah, my child's like got this poster of this band or this poster of this band. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Meanwhile, my kid is listening to like, Wicked. And
I think it's great to put other people's soundtracks on your own soundtrack. Like, I used to grow up listening to like my best friend's wedding soundtrack, or like all those like older sort of romances. That became my personal life soundtrack, because I thought I was a main character. I thought I was
yeah.
Julia Roberts. So
I've been recently doing some rom-com rewatches because of we're getting ready to do an episode of like, if you liked this movie, you should read these books, kind
nice.
of thing. And I've been making my poor husband, watch all these old rom-coms, and The Wedding Date has one of the best soundtracks, like tons of Michael Bublé. And I'm just like, I love these songs, but I'm also like, middle 40s.
That movie was underrated. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was very popular at the
It
time and
wasn't,
I was
but it wasn't
okay.
though. No,
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
it's a
I
great
love
one.
older rom-coms.
I love them too. I love them too. There was a bunch of them we've watched recently, and some held up well. Others, I'm kind of like,
Side eye.
hmm, that did not age great. Not great. Um, okay, so this is Plane, Trains, and All the Feels. It does have a little bit of Planes, Trains, Automobile kind of misadventure feels to it. Was that like a movie you watched as a kid?
Yeah, I watched it once when I was really young, and then I watched it again in preparation for writing. And it's the same as when you're reading as a writer, where you're noticing it differently because you're trying to like do something with it. But when I watched it as a kid, I just loved Steve Martin. And then as when I was watching it to prepare, I was seeing it from a very different angle. I'm like, I was watching for how many things they fit in, how many disasters could they manage. Probably budget limited them, or else they would have lit more things on fire. But
I'm absolutely certain more things would have been on fire in that movie had they had a bigger budget.
exactly. So yes, I do love that movie though. I just love the dynamic of those two. And so of course there's that fear of like, how could I even do anything even remotely similar? Because they're iconic, but we do what we must.
We do what we must. And really, honestly, Steve Martin is such a great comedian that anytime you can kind of give those vibes, that funniness, quirkiness that he has into a book, I'm there for it. I think it's fantastic. I haven't watched Murderers in the Building yet, that series, but I need to.
I do too. It's on my list for sure.
Same here. Same here. Okay, so this book is really, like you said, kind of a series of mishaps. Did you have a favorite mishap that you wrote?
Ugh, I love mishaps. I love problems. Um, Probably I think the car moment. I mean, it's a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler because it's kind of fundamental to the whole thing going awry. But just the idea that I could, in a contemporary rom-com, like smash an automobile and have it light on fire and careen into the woods, and somehow still make the book feel plausible. That's my favorite one. Um, so I would say that for sure. It's just the moment where I think you realize what kind of book it's going to be. In case it hadn't been abundantly clear, like we are not getting out of this unscathed. And I just had this very visceral, like as I was writing it, I could see them standing there watching this happen and just feel the moment that all changed everything for them.
Well, and the way you kind of wrote it, like as a reader, you kind of feel the pressure, like it just levels down, and you're like, deep breath. They got a bunch to get through now.
Yeah, this is actually good. We have more to deal with now. Okay.
Yeah.
Fighting for our lives on the side of the road.
Um, so let's see here. We've got series of mishaps. This is a road trip. Um, when you go on a road trip, do you play games? Because she tries. She
She
tries
tries.
to
She
entertain
tries.
him. Do you have road
Uh,
trip games that you play?
I do. I remember as a kid playing a lot more games. We always loved the ABC game, but my brother would get mad because he didn't want to read anything, even a single letter out the window. He was not. He was the math guy. I was the reading guy. So it would become competitive, and if I found stuff faster than him or whatever, so he was like, "I'm not playing these games with you." And then now my husband is the one who's like, "Let's play a game," and I'm like, "Or not," because I'm reading. So it's we're a little bit different. I'm not the Cassidy asking for the games, but I do love the way that it's an easy way to show what kind of people they are in a car.
Yeah. So you do add quite a bit of emotion to this book. I don't want to miss our chance to talk about that because, yes, there are some funny mishaps and there's a lot happening, and it's really such a great, funny, light story, but they have some heart to hearts. They have some really deep, emotional connections, which I think lends to it's more than just an instant connection. Like there is
Mhm.
definitely bigger stuff at play here. Um, but the emotion never felt like it didn't feel manufactured and it didn't feel overly heavy. Is it hard to balance that a little bit?
For sure. And it's, as I said, with it's hard to balance the romance and the comedy. It's just as hard, if not harder, to balance the pain and the romance, because in especially in Luke, who was someone who has a lot of heavy self-imposed but real responsibility to his family, and that's his sort of driving motivation in all of the things he does. It could have easily been very heavy, and it could have carried that, he could have wore it more outwardly through the book. But figuring out the balance of how much would he let it out, how much would anyone even know what kind of pain that he had been through, and all that. So balancing that in this kind of book it was very challenging. And not, I didn't want to bury the lead either and have you have this fun romp, and then like at 58% it's like boom, trauma. Which sometimes happen in real life when you meet people, right? You're just like
Right.
having a great dinner and then you're like, oh. But so just kind of giving glimpses and then knowing just how much to reveal to make it powerful.
Yeah, it was very well done. It really did balance it and it created a whole story. And I really felt like as I was reading this, I got to know Cassidy and Luke and I understood who these characters were and what was driving them forward and making some of the decisions they had to make. It's a really great story. I really, really did enjoy it. But I have to ask, do you have snacks for when you're on a road trip that you must have snacks? Because it's funny, I can't remember who we were talking to, and they were like, "What? You have road trip snacks?" I'm like, "Yeah, we absolutely have road trip snacks. Like in our house, it's combos. The pretzel with the
Yes,
cheddar cheese. We have to have a bag of combos when we go on a road trip."
I definitely do. I love to get things on road trips that I never eat otherwise. It's like you become a different human being when you like go to the first gas station on a road trip. But I love bugles because I love putting them on my fingers and just being a weirdo. And I like doing different kinds of like coffee creamer concoctions. And so I sort of put that in the book because that was like an homage to all the interesting things I've attempted with coffee on road trips. But yes, definitely bugles, definitely salty foods, probably more salt than anyone needs to consume at any given moment. That's what I like to bring.
That's and I do think so. This is Midwest. Like we go through Kansas on our way. Like Topeka plays quite a bit of a. they try, they try to get on a train in
They
Topeka,
do.
thinking that that will help move them forward, and it was a bust. It did not work.
Yes, that was Cassidy's bless your heart sub. If I'm from the South, bless your heart moment. She's like, if we get on this train, we will be there instantly because the website says so. But the website says basically 24 hours instead of what she thought was going to be a quick trip. And that is something that I would do. My husband works for the railroad and he talks about trains, and my eyes glaze over. And like I would be the person who would just like peek at an Amtrak website and be like, I'll be in California in 10 minutes. Yeah, I believe it. And I would do that. And so she did her best, but it was also going to take longer because of the delays anyway. So
Right, right. Um, do you have a favorite part from the book? Like we talked about your favorite mishap, but do you have like a favorite moment? You don't have to give any spoilers away. You can even just allude to it.
yes, I have two. One, I'll just say Vegas because Vegas is my favorite, just entire part of the book. But a little more specifically, there's a moment when they have to stay in a motel and they find themselves in a very strange themed under the sea motel. And the reason I like it is because when they're kind of falling over themselves into the lobby, exhausted, and it's like a fever dream, and they're like, I cannot believe that this place exists because it's so over the top. I just love that moment in any romance or any rom-com where two people, or even in real life, where you're hysterically laughing because you're so tired and like it's absurd, and then when you just stop laughing and you sort of lean into that moment of, oh gosh, we're alone, like on a date or in a book, and it's like oh. And I just love that sort of anticipation that like follows almost like a breakdown of laughter. And I think that scene is kind of the turning point in the book where they're like, oh my gosh, this ridiculousness, oh, we're alone together. And it's so that moment's my favorite.
Yeah, that realization that like, oh, what did I do?
What have I done?
And now what do we do?
Exactly.
Um Stacy says, she's in the chat, and she said she always had a cooler of drinks, sandwiches, and bags with different chips and jerky. And yes, I do think beef jerky is a must in the car
Yes.
for a
I
road
want
trip.
somebody who knows to like prepare a cooler. I am a mother of two, a teacher, grown adult, and do you think I ever prepare anything? No. I'm like, okay, let's stop at the first gas station because I am 14 years old at heart.
Yes, let's stop at the Subway. You each have $10. Get what you're the Speedway. You each have $10. Get what you need.
Like Rum Springer, like just go ham. We could not have prepared for this. It couldn't
Sorry.
have been done.
Sorry, you didn't get what you wanted, but there's a new Speedway like 2 hours down the road. We'll try again.
Exactly. I
Like we
love
even
it.
have certain like routines of places we have to go. Like you have to, and now we have a hybrid car, so we don't stop at the gas station necessarily before we go on a road trip. And they'll be like, "Don't we go?" We recently had to drive to Cleveland. And they're like, "Are we not stopping?" I'm like, "No need to. We got gas. We're good."
I think if my first draft had made it completely to publication, I would have been like approached by 7-Eleven for sponsorship because I was just like, and then we're back at the gas station. You're like, we don't have to show every gas station they stop at. And I'm like, you're right. We can cut the gas stations. It's just such a part of my, like, because I've gone on so many road trips. I'm like,
Yeah.
art imitates life. And we're at 7-Eleven getting another slushie.
I was going to say, how many Slurpee sightings are in this book?
We had to get it down to one. It was a real challenge, but we made it.
Do you have a favorite Slurpee flavor?
I like cherry. I love everything cherry.
In our house, we call them Frosty Freezy Freezes in honor of Phineas and Ferb. Because my kids are older and we're 20 and 18, and they still call them Frosty Freezy Freezes. Um,
I love it.
I like Coke. I like the Coke. I think they taste good. I don't know.
They do. They do. I want anything that can stain. Like if I'm apparently like cherry coke, like all those dark ones. And I'm like, why am I like this? Now I can't show my face because it's stained.
Because now I
That's
have
what
like
I like.
blue lips and
Exactly.
so funny. Does anybody have any questions for Livy? Like I said, you guys can grab Plain Trains and All the Feels wherever you get books. This is actually your second novel. There is another one out that is about rival radio hosts.
So Talk Flirty to Me is about two people who have to record a spicy audiobook. He is her brother's best friend, and they also already have a history. So
Oh,
the audiobook is a lot more than they expected to have to reckon with, shall we say.
fun.
Yes.
And Plain Trains and All the Feels is spicy, you guys. So it does pop. In our world, we call it the put out percentage. So that is the percentage before, there's spice. And so this one does pop. Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, Livy, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, tell us what's next before we say goodbye. What's next for you? As
Yes,
Susie just asked, what's next?
I have a something that we haven't actually publicized much. It's going to be like a fun little surprise. That's not a surprise because I'm talking about it, but I have a book coming out in August, and
Okay.
we're going to do a cover and title reveal really soon. But I will tell you that it is not a road trip book for sure. It is two people who cannot seem to escape each other after meeting on a very lackluster dating app date, and then she turns out, well, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say, but they can't escape each other, and it's coming soon. So that'll be in August, and then we'll have something in spring of next year.
So is it with Entangled again this fall?
Yes, it'll
Okay.
be Tangled.
That's fine. Liz won't get mad. Don't worry. I'll just say, Liz,
Sorry.
she was talking to me. It was fine. And she'll be
It
like,
was
Becky,
fine.
stop it. I always I'll get like Avery Flynn on or Mariah Ankerman on, and I'll get them to spill tea for me. And then later I'll get an email and they're like, I spilled a lot of tea. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. They're like,
Okay, things were said that then I go and tell people later, I'm like, well, if you go and listen to that podcast, it tells you all about what the book was about.
right?
There you go.
Right. I like it when tea gets spelt. It makes, it's exciting. And I love the idea. To be honest, I love the idea of dating apps and playing into romances and rom-coms because so I'm older and AOL was the thing when I was, young in 20s. And my husband and I actually met on AOL. And yesterday we celebrated 24 years. So do not discount dating apps and all that kind of stuff. But like, I was reading a book and they were talking about the Tinder logo. I have no idea what that is. Like, swipe right, swipe left isn't, I know it because of cultural, like pop culture references, but I never experienced any of that. So
Right.
I think dating apps and romance are kind of fun because it's new territory for me.
Right. And you hear the success stories and it's like, no, no, they really work. And then you hear the horror stories of all these horrible things that have happened to people. And I really like that sort of in between space of like, what if you just continue to go on the same Groundhog Day lackluster date over and over again? Like that's another thing that happens often. And so it's just interesting all the different ways that people, how much they're willing to subject themselves to in the name of love. Like, how
Yeah.
much are you willing to suffer for it? It's like Olympic sport level.
Well, I also, there's a girl over on TikTok that does like, why is that your dating profile pic
Yes,
roundups?
yes,
And I'm
yes.
like, why do people take pictures with fish and think that that's going to attract a mate?
I,
Like,
it's who are you attract? Are you attracting like big like whales? Because the fish is to catch the bigger thing that eats the fish. What are you attracting? You know?
yeah, or a firearm? Like, hmm,
Yes, it's. I don't know if it's a message. I just think of like the food chain. Now I'm thinking of it's like who's the gun attracting? It's just a
right?
whole thing. It's
Well,
a
I'm
whole
like,
thing.
I wouldn't stand there and like hold a thing of duct tape and a knife and be like, hey, want to go on a date?
Oh
Wrong
my god.
message.
I would
Wrong
definitely
message.
be kicked off a dating app because I would start making shark jokes at every fish profile picture. Like, I'm your shark if that's my fish or something. And they'll be like, you're not welcome here.
You hooked me, baby. I am
There
here.
it is. The puns would be strong. Yeah, the puns would be strong for sure. That's why I have to write books, somewhere to put all the puns that
Right?
I'm not using on dating apps.
Just leave the cringe for the books. Don't go to the
Exactly.
dating app.
Exactly.
Anyway, Livy, thank you so much for joining me here this evening for happy hour. And like I said, everyone, Planes, Trains, and All the Feels is available right now at all retailers, and you guys can grab that. Um, and she'll have another book coming out in August. So, so exciting.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was really great.
Anytime. Guys, I'll be back next Thursday with holy goodness, with author Sydney uh, Carger. And we are celebrating his debut release, Best Men.
Ooh.
Um, and we're kicking off Pride Month next Thursday. So, anyway, until next time, everyone, happy reading. Are we off?